Just a couple brief notes, everyone. I'm Brian Branson. I'm the president of the Armed Forces Heritage Museum. And there's a tremendous amount of work that went into this, as you could probably tell. We'd like to thank Todd for coming all the way from Pittsburgh and helping us out with this. It's always a great event. I want to thank our friends over here from Veterans of Foreign Wars 491 in Yardville for their donation for breakfast. Also, you'll find on your table a form, a critique form. Please fill it out before you leave, so when we do this next year, we'll have a better idea what we can change to make it good for everyone. And our friends from Aetna down here have Medicare solutions for military. They came in at Todd's invitation, and it's wonderful to see them. So thanks, everybody, and thank you very much for coming. It's all yours, buddy.
Thank you. Thank you, Brian. And I also want to thank Bob Von Bargen, especially for being the catalyst for this event. Bob, thank you very much. We'll be hearing from Bob a little later. Hey, I just want to let you know we have these events, about 40 of them a year. Most of them are in the western part of the state. We have a few of them in eastern PA and then one here in New Jersey. We're working on one in Florida for next year. We have a couple in 4 in Ohio also. So we're trying to branch out with our in-person events, but we also have live stream events. We're on the internet every Monday night at 7 p.m., every Thursday night at 7 p.m. We are on doing what we do here in our Veterans Breakfast, but we do it in the evening. There's no breakfast. You don't have to be a veteran, and it's not really a club. Otherwise, the Veterans Breakfast Club is perfectly named. You go to veteransbreakfastclub.org and you can join our programs. We always have interesting people from around the country and around the world on. There's some people I met here. Bill Spitch here, I've seen him online, never seen him in person. It was great to meet him in person. Bob Riley, I think he's been online. Hal has been online, but never met him in person. So it's good to meet people in person who have joined us on the Zoom room. We live stream it to Facebook and YouTube, and we get really extraordinary stories, extraordinary veterans from around the country. We've got Harry Stewart, one of the last remaining P-51 Tuskegee Airmen before he passed away. He came on twice to share his story. We had Woody Williams, the last World War II Medal of Honor recipient, come on and share his story. We had Kristen Hanna last year, author of the best-selling novel The Women, about nurses in Vietnam. And we also had some of the nurses that she got her stories from to base the book around. We do BBC Jeopardy, which is always a popular night, where we have military and veteran-oriented questions. It's a lot of fun. We'll have our next program Monday night. We'll have Major General William Matz on. Fascinating story. He was a combat veteran of Vietnam, wounded. But what's really fascinating is he was a polio victim. And I mean, like paralyzed. And he ended up rehabilitating ferociously as a as a young teenager and deciding to join the Army. And he credits the Army with overcoming his disability. It's a really fascinating story. I encourage you to join us. That'll be Monday, April 7th at 7 p.m. One of the events that Aetna sponsored was our big event, one of our biggest of the year, which is our Vietnam Veterans Day event, March 29th. Vietnam veterans are the only group of veterans with their own day to recognize and celebrate and honor, and that is March 29th. And we had a big event in Pittsburgh, and we live streamed it. And for the event, we presented every Vietnam veteran, that is anybody who served between 1955 and 1975, this book, which is a 64-page history of Vietnam, the Vietnam War. And it was specifically written for Vietnam veterans and for those who are close to Vietnam veterans. It's a really, really good book. Do you know why, General? I know it's a good book. Because I wrote it. Exactly. That's exactly it. Exactly it. And the goal was, I'm a historian. I spent many years teaching and writing history before I got involved with the Veterans Breakfast Club. I taught a course at Penn State called Vietnam and War and Peace. And what I did is I took a lot of my lecture notes from that class, and the struggle was I tried to tell the history of the Vietnam War in 25,000 words in an engaging way that'll encourage people to understand the scope of the war and the depth of the history behind the war. So this is all to say, if you are a veteran, please do take one of these. If you're a veteran who served between 1955 and 1975, we printed up extra also for other people who might want to read it. It's $5 if you'd like it and you're not a veteran. Please do pick it up. I always like, and this is our magazine because I'm a writer and historian. I like to write the stories that we hear at our events, and we do this every quarter. BBC Magazine, this is our latest magazine. It is on the Oath. It came out over the winter. Please do take a copy, or 20 if you'd like. We send these out to 11,000 households. Then we print up another 8,000 for distribution. So I bring, hundreds here, and it's great because I get them out of my garage, and my wife can get her car into the garage. So I ask that you take as many as you'd like. Please do. Before I go on, I always do like to recognize, we always like to recognize the oldest veteran, the senior veteran in the room. And I'm looking around. I mean, you all look pretty old. But you know what? It's not often you get a Civil War veteran. Drew, could you stand up? So, Drew, you've been around for a while. First of all, 180 years. That's a long time. You have this heavy wool uniform. What has changed in the Army since your days in the 1860s to today? Yeah, weaponry. What's changed the most?
Food.
Food. What did you eat when you were campaigning in the 1860s?
I only remember eating hardtack for 4 years.
What is hardtack?
It's like the hardest cookie you could ever imagine. It doesn't break. It doesn't melt in coffee. It doesn't, and it doesn't really fill you.
And what was your job in the Army?
I was the postal worker. The postmaster was actually the captain of our regiment, and I was just the liaison. I would go, and my partner, we'd go to different trains and pick up the mail and bring it back to our.
And I imagine the mail was pretty important for morale, right? These guys are away from their villages and towns for all these months and years, maybe. And there was no telephone then, right? No iPhones?
None of that, really. We had a signal corps, and we had a guy that did telegraph.
Yeah.
And horses and runners.
And runners. So people relied on the good old postal service, right, to get letters back and forth.
Correct. And the most cherished thing a soldier could get in the field is a letter from home.
Yeah.
From his loved one, his mother,
Right.
father. Sometimes they would send brogans, new shoes, scarves, gloves, socks.
So even back then, footwear was important.
Correct. It was one of the hardest things to come upon, and one of the least given out.
Yeah.
You would more or less find an old soldier that had lost something and take his shoes.
It
was even worse.
That's how they didn't have shoes. I'm so struck, and I am struck because we do events with veterans of all eras, all ages, and branches of service. I'm struck by the differences among the eras and also some of the universal qualities of military service. It was the same in the 1860s as it is today. You're away from home, you're away from family, the family worries, there's danger. You're always, knowing people who are getting hurt and dying. How did you deal with that? How did it change your life serving in the Civil War?
Well, first person, I came in from Ireland on a boat, and
You really lost that accent.
and the man when we came to on shore and in say like New York Harbor or any kind of major harbor, would be a recruiter there, and as soon as you came off the boat, he would say, "Wouldn't you like to join the military? You get a nice uniform, get to travel, 3 meals a day."
Yeah.
But he didn't realize that the one was hardtack, one was salt, and the other was wood or tacky wood or something like that. But yeah, you usually went off to, you would be more than happy to sign up because you knew you'd be able to send money back home
That's right.
and you'd live a little better.
That's right.
And you get to see America.
Right.
And
And you survived to go back home.
I did.
Yeah.
I survived all wars, and I was there at Appomattox Courthouse in 1865 of April
Wow.
to see the Confederacy finally surrender.
God bless you, Drew. Thank you very much. Thanks for coming today. General, I think he's a pretender. I've got my doubts. General, General Dutko, would you mind standing up? I think you might be our senior veteran in the room. How old are you?
89.
You're 89. Nobody is 89, Pete? All right. Oh, Bob Von Bargen. How old are you, Bob?
Be 90 in July.
90 in July. That means you're 89. We got a tie ball game here. You're older than 89? You're 92? You can sit down now. General, I'm all confused here. First of all, there's no way you're 92.
Yeah.
December 2nd, 1932. What the heck is your secret to... I'm gonna squeeze past you. Excuse me if you don't mind. Would you mind standing up? Your name is Russell? Russell, you're 92 years old.
92.
What's your secret?
Just living. That's the key.
Did your parents live to be old?
My brother lived to be 95. My father passed away at 77.
I mean, it's not just, you just look so youthful and seem to be so energetic.
My cousin Joey, his mother, and my father were brothers and sisters. And we're both 92. We're both born in 1932. And we lived next door to each other for all those years, and here we are 92 years later. Okay?
Okay, so when did you join the military and what branch did you join?
First of all, I was in the Air Force.
Yay!
Smart man.
18, my cousin Joey, he joined in February, and I joined 1 week later. And we went to Sampson Air Force Base, which was where we gave our basic training. And then from there, they shipped us all over. I went to San Angelo, Texas, stayed there for a bit, Greenville, Mississippi. Then from Greenville, Mississippi to Biloxi, Mississippi. Then I went to Air Operations School, and I graduated there to be Air Operations mechanic, not a mechanic, working in the control towers. So, and then I was transferred to Dover Air Force Base, Delaware, for 2 years, and that's where I stayed. And then I got discharged honorably in 56.
1956, okay.
Joined 52 to 56, yes.
So that was during the tail end of the Korean War when you joined?
Yes.
Were you ever concerned that you'd be sent over to that?
No, I wasn't. No, I did. I joined the service, and I was very proud to be an American, yes, and I was very proud to be a veteran, yes.
Still are.
I am.
Thank you, Russell.
There's my commander over there for the American Legion over there. I've been American Legion, okay, for over 20-some years, and we have a meeting once a month, and I know what's coming up is the flags for the veterans that have passed away. We'll be doing that with the for Memorial.
Thank you, Russell. Should I talk to your cousin? All right. All right, Joe. You're 92 also. He's clearly older, though. Oh, you're 6 months older. Okay. Could you stand up, please? Joe, what branch of service? You were Air Force also. You joined 1 week before he did. Where did the Air Force send you?
Las Vegas, Nevada. Then I worked with the National Guard, and I went to France for the Berlin crisis.
Berlin crisis.
France for a year.
Can you tell people what the Berlin crisis was? That would have been August of 1961. The Berlin crisis, and man, it was big.
Yeah, I never got to Berlin, but that's where you're having a lot of trouble with the communists and yeah, right.
It was the Berlin Wall went up. 6 a.m. Actually pre-dawn, August 1961. Massive construction workers start constructing a wall around the city of West Berlin, all the way around, completely around, so that nobody from East Germany, East Berlin, could get into West Berlin at all. And this was in defiance of, since the 15 years after World War II, and it looked like this might trigger World War III. So they sent you to France to kind of stage for this.
France, I was in France, Africa. Went to Africa for training for pilots. I was a mechanic, jet mechanic, and we were there for a year. And it was pretty. It wasn't that bad. Chemin Air Force Base, if anybody knows that one. Yeah.
Is your last name Rad?
I just have to tell you that General Dutko was his commanding officer in France.
Well, we're going to ask him what kind of an airman you were. So, General Dutko, what kind of an airman was Joe?
Let me tell you, I was still an airman then, and I was a staff sergeant. And I'll tell you, we took 1,000 people in 24 airplanes to Saigon Air Base. No fatalities. We did a great job for 10 months, and then the Air Force came in. We came back home. But I'll tell you, we had a great crew. Freddie Sikorsky, your good friend, he's gone. But Joe, so good to see you, bud. Yeah. Sometimes I'm the whole, so. But anyway, great to be a partner with him.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Russell. Thank you, General. The next issue of our magazine, and I know that only half the room can see the screen, unfortunately, because of where it's situated, but the next issue of our magazine is at the printer now. And again, we send it out free to addresses, people, anybody, any address we have. If you don't get this magazine, it's because we don't have your address. Let us know your address. I have sheets of paper here, to registration forms, pens. I could pass them around, or somebody can. If you, please do let us know your address. You'll get this in the mail. So, you can see from the cover, the focus of this issue is the fall of Saigon. And that is because Saigon fell on April 30th, 1975, 50 years ago this month. 50 years ago this month. And it struck me in talking to Vietnam veterans, how many Vietnam veterans remember where they were on April 30th when they saw those images of Saigon falling, which meant that the Vietnam War was finally over, and that the American effort to keep the country of South Vietnam independent and alive was dead, had failed. And that is, I think it's a crushing memory for many of our Vietnam veterans. And if you could look at the cover there, you can see at the bottom, we also have an article or two on the fall of Kabul. Because what we found in August of 2021, if you remember, if you cast back to August of 2021, those similar images of thousands of people struggling to climb aboard airplanes and Chinook helicopters at Hamid Karzai Airport in Kabul, Afghanistan, to get out. And what ended up was the largest airlift in American history, 80,000 people. 80,000 people were airlifted out of Afghanistan in 15 days. 80,000 people. on fixed wing aircraft and rotary wing. So, and a lot of our Afghan veterans share that how crushed they felt seeing, the end result of their 20-year war. So, what I thought I would ask the room today, those of you who are Vietnam veteran, do you remember the fall of Saigon? And if so, do you remember what you felt, what you thought, what you felt? Tom, I saw you nod your head. I'm going to come over to you here. Would you mind standing up, Tom?
That was an emotional event, watching it on TV in my home, not realizing that it was the end of the war. I just saw I had no idea I'd be so emotional of such an event here 50 years later. I saw this. My son was just born, my youngest son. He's 50 years old now. So he only had a few months being a Vietnam War baby. And I just watched it on TV. I remember the Chinook with the people hanging on it from the hotel in Saigon. I'll never get the image out of my mind. Just like I don't get the image out of my mind of seeing the World Trade Centers. So I could just keep rambling on. All I could say is I was in my living room watching it. My wife didn't quite understand what I was thinking because I never even talked about it. But I'll share this, and I could keep going on. I'm just hunting for words, and usually I have a lot of words to say. When I'm on the microphone, I usually have a lot of words to say, but this one here did absolutely take my breath away. So I want to share that with you, and I'm sure there's other men and women in this organization right now who will have similar or even more profound effects.
Thank you, Tom. Bill Spitch, I'm going to put you on the spot. Bill, could you stand up, please? This is a picture of Bill. He was an airborne. That's a whole other issue. Why you would join the jump out of an airplane? The other quote. What is it?
It was 55. Extra. Yes, sir. That, Mr. Microphone. Yes. Yes, that was an extra $55.
That's why you joined the airplane?
Absolutely. It was all monetary.
You served in Vietnam 1966 with the 173rd Airborne Brigade?
I went over as, with A Company first at 503rd, then I was shipped up toward On K with the CAV out of Camp Radcliffe, where that picture was taken.
Okay. Okay. I've noticed something about you New Jersey guys. You're not afraid to take the microphone away from me. In Pittsburgh, they kind of let me hold the microphone. Man, you guys like, I want to know what you thought, if you remember the fall of Saigon, April 30th, 1975.
I do not, sir. I do not. I was, what was I? Already 13 years in before the reduction in force started, and that ended up in 1976. So I was either in the Philippines or I was out of then Camp Kilmer, which is now the Livingston campus up on Rutgers University.
Right.
And there was a detachment out of Camp Kilmer with the 10th Special Forces out of Fort Devens, Mass at that time.
Right.
And
You were it. You were still.
it was just like I was in jump school when Kennedy got away.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, all right, keep moving.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
We're going to continue on, and you're going to continue training. And Jack had a bad day in Dallas.
Right.
I can't help that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
There you go. But to answer your question, no. I may have had something to say about it at the time, but I cannot recall at this time.
Right.
Very well, sir.
Can I ask you about your service in Vietnam, 1966? That's rather early on, and we have a few other veterans here who were in Vietnam early in the war. Can you tell us the first time that you were shot at came under fire?
That would be Operation Masher, which later became Operation Masher White Wing, and then that was followed by, I believe, the next operation would be Crockett or Bowie, and then the next one after that was Operation Crazy Horse, and that was in May of 1966. And then the other things that we did at that juncture, which changed drastically after 66, we worked in three distinct ways, either as a hunter-killer team, as a quick reaction force, or as R&I, which was reconnaissance and intelligence. You were sent into the field or into the bush, whatever you want to call it, to do certain functions for those particular acts, if you want to cite it that way. And and then that drastically changed once when 67 came around. It was different. You had a lot of ability to do things that you could do later on. You didn't have to go through the various people in Saigon like they did later on. You could call in your own airstrike, you could call in your own artillery strike, and you were never questioned. But later on, as it went on, you saw changes in the chain of command and how they did that. Yeah. Pardon me?
Slow things down. Make quick decisions.
Okay, Ron, you just volunteered to talk next. So, Bill, I noticed that in your explanation, you're talking about external things, but what did you feel? What did you think when you were shot at for the first time? Were you scared? Was it a shock?
Vengeance is mine. Anyway, yes. Now, I don't. Okay. Really? Okay. For me, it was very straightforward. I wasn't sent in a unit. I came over on a levy. Back in the 65, 66, and even into 67, you would get individual orders to go to in-country. So I was already mentally prepared because of the particular people in the 101st at that time. We had quite a few people from the 11th Airborne, which, if you know the history of the 11th Airborne, was in the Pacific during World War II. You had quite a few people that were in the 503rd, which later becomes the 173rd. The 503rd was involved in New Guinea. They were involved in the Philippines, just like the 11th. So you had a lot of veterans that were still in service, and you would have classes on map reading, tactics, and you would go about that on a regular basis. And they would tell you what to look for when you were in the field, because a lot of the Vietnamese that were either, if you want to call them Pathan, whether you want to call them NVA, they were trained by the Japanese, because at the end of World War II, many Japanese stayed in country or in Vietnam and trained the forces, as you know, as the NVA. So a lot of their tactics were very similar to the Japanese. So these guys were very helpful in you understanding what you were about to enter into. To answer your question about being somewhat scared, yeah, you're always scared. I think that carries you through. But my thought was always, I'm going home and you ain't. And that's the way that's going to work. And you used good tactics and superior firepower. Yeah.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you so much. Ron, I'm going to ask you to stand. This is Ron Zelkowski. You were a dust-off medic. Dust-off
medic, got a long band to the 90th Evac Hospital and the 90th Airlines Company.
Can you explain to me what a dust-off medic is?
Well, when I first over there, I was just a cop. When I first went over there, I was just a combat medic, and in '67 they decided that UH helicopters would become air ambulances. And at that time, they didn't have any dust-off medics. And being a medic, a combat medic, they
you never to volunteer for something, said we need people that would be attached to helicopter units to evacuate casualties on the battlefield. And some of the nurses here understand that because they did the triages when I dropped them off. But yeah. Yep. So I ended up being a desktop medic. I was attached to a helicopter company, and what we do is we fly it in and take casualties out, but we'd also do extractions and injections, as special forces know, and pick them up in the boonies. Basically, we had the driver, a pilot, and a co-pilot. We had a crew chief and myself, and sometimes we didn't have a crew chief; it would just be myself. But picking up the casualties, that was my job, and to make sure that my job was to keep them alive, to get them back to the hospitals. That was my job. Stop the bleeding, keep them alive. I mean, that's all I had in my head. And as you can imagine, if I start crying, like a little post-traumatic stress stuff.
And that's it, Ron. And Ron, I don't want to, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I cannot imagine what you saw and what you experienced. Obviously, you saved some people, and you didn't save some people. Some people couldn't be saved. And how do you overcome the trauma of that experience? How do you work through the trauma of that experience?
Well, I try not to think about the people that I lost. I still see faces, but I try not to think about the people that I lost, and I just like to think I did the best job I did to keep them alive. And I try to think about, I'm not the person that I need to consider. I need to consider them. They were always first. My casualty just came before me. When I got out of that helicopter, helicopters never landed. For those who were never landed. They were 16, 20 inches above there, so you jumped out and had to lift stuff up and put them in. And litters were on your shoulders. But your adrenaline gets going, the only thing you think, save this life.
Yeah.
Stop the bleeding, put a tourniquet on, start an IV, do whatever you have to do, compression, patches, whatever you had to do to save their life. And you never thought about yourself. Nobody thought about yourself, but everything stopped. Everything stopped. And I couldn't sleep at night. Or I'd wake up in the morning and the helicopter medic next to me, they were packing up his equipment, taking it back home. So yeah, it was pretty traumatic. But how do I deal with it? I always think that I was there to help them.
Yeah.
And every once in a while, I meet a combat veteran who was wounded with a Purple Heart, and I think maybe I helped that person somehow. No one come talk to me. Right. Special Forces, give you guys a lot of credit because I did a lot of extractions, and put a lot of them on my air ambulances. Drop off in the booty docks in the middle of jungles, doing long-range reconnaissance patrols and stuff. That's scary. They had harder jobs than I did, I gotta be honest. My job to keep people alive, their job was to get out the enemy. Yeah, we were shot at the helicopters and didn't care whether they had a Red Cross or not. We were just big fat targets. But when I reflect back, I think that my job is to keep them alive. And I look around this room here and I see infantry divisions all over the place and CAV and special forces. I'm saying, maybe my unit helped keep those guys alive. And that's about it.
Well, Ron, I'm not done with him yet. So. Ron got out of the Army in 1969, and then he went back in 1985, 86, and served in Desert Storm. So you were like Grandpa in Desert Storm, right?
Yeah, well, I was a senior officer at that time, yeah. And I never thought I'd be called back into combat. My wife and 5 kids were at home, and I was attached to a reserve outfit that was part of the Rapid Deployment Force out of Philadelphia. And all of a sudden, I got a call. How the call goes, it said, report to your unit. You've been activated. And, of course, OPSAC, you couldn't say anything. I just said, I've done what I'll see you again with you, honey, and that was it. And the next thing, I was over in Desert Storm in Saudi Arabia in a combat support hospital as executive officer. And but that was a piece of cake compared to Vietnam. And I was in a different position, but that was a different type of, if you consider it, war over there. But I did my time in that, and God bless me, I came home, and my wife said to me, get the hell out. You got 20 years of what the hell are you doing? You got 5 kids at home, you have to get through college. Then I had a civilian job. He said, get the hell out. So it wasn't me that retired. She retired me. She retired me.
Thank you, Ron. Thank you so much. Do we have any other Vietnam veterans who remember the fall of Saigon? Have a Fred Angelini?
The fall of Saigon very vividly. And what stood out
around here. That's okay.
I saw the attacks, North Vietnamese attacks coming into the embassy, and I said, "Well, this is it. That's the end of the war." And I was very happy that it was the end of the war. I had friends who didn't come back, and I'm glad that I was able to come back alive. Thanks God. So that's what I remember the most.
So you were happy that the war was over, and it didn't matter as much to you that the mission, the U.S. mission there, had failed.
I understood the mission had failed way before Saigon falling, because we should never have been there. And thanks to John F. Kennedy and Robert McNamara and Lyndon Johnson, they extended the war for 10 years. No more next time.
That's it. Thank you very much, Fred. Billy Terrell.
Thanks. I remember that day, and I felt severe anger when Saigon fell. I was really angry, to the point where I went in my closet and I had my uniform in there. I had a helmet I brought back, and anything that I brought back from Vietnam, including my uniform, the ribbons, everything, went in a garbage bag and I put it on the curb. I was distraught for about a week. And I was playing in a band, and the band that week, because I was playing organ, and the band stopped me a couple times on breaks and says, "You're making an awful lot of mistakes tonight." I said, "Well, actually, I should have just had you put somebody else in." That was a good week that I was just angry, because all I could think about are the people that all that blood and guts. And let me say something about PTSD. It doesn't, your MOS has nothing to do with it. If you're in the hospital, and I was in the hospital 3 times, I was in 67 evac, the worst was 8th Field in the Trang. And I was a supply guy. But when you're in the hospital for any amount of time, and you hear that one dust off coming in after another, and one person after another screaming, I never got over it to this day. But anyway, that was a horrible day for me. I was just angry. I was bitter about it. I said, "Well, then why? After all that, why?" I knew it was a tough thing. I knew it was tough, because the first week in country, I went to my company commander, who I was very friendly with, and I said, "Captain Bond, you know what? I think the whole answer here is to get through this year and go home. Because I can tell you right now, this enemy, you're not going to beat this enemy on the ground. But to say we lost makes me angry, because we did not lose militarily. We lost strategically. I was sick to my stomach the whole time, because I was dedicated. I did what I had to do. I never lost my patriotism. But strategically, I felt it was ridiculous. Anyway, I'm gonna shut up. That was a terrible day for me.
Thank you, Billy. Thank you, Billy. And so accurate in terms of strategically, and I think that's emphasized in that book. The Tet Offensive is a perfect example. The Tet Offensive was a massive defeat for the Viet Cong, the biggest defeat of the war. 58,000 Viet Cong were killed in the Tet Offensive. 58,000, the same number as Americans through all 8 years of the war. It should have gone down in history as kind of the greatest defeat of the Viet Cong in the war. Instead, it's remembered as an American defeat, because strategically it was, because of the way the public turned against the war after seeing the images of the Tet Offensive in January, February 1968. But anyhow, any other Vietnam veterans? Hello. Stepped on your foot, Larry. You only need the bottom of your foot, yeah. Bob, how are you?
I'm doing great. You're probably one of the youngest guys here.
Yeah.
I'll take the mic. So.
Okay.
Now I'm 78 years old. Yes, I did serve in Vietnam. I was there for the Tet Offensive. I was there between April 67 and April 68. The attack at Benoit was dramatic for a lot of people. We didn't find this out until I went back to Vietnam regarding finding the graves. That's another project that I'm working on. But in any event, we were told at 1800 were waiting for us on the edge, the east perimeter, and that's basically where they attacked from. They came in at an angle between Long Binh and the 101st Airborne on our north side. And basically, we shut them down when they hit the perimeter, and the 101st shut them down also when they passed by. There's more detail to that. I won't get into that. But the battle ended up when we went back to Vietnam about finding the graves and met with a commanding officer in the Vietnamese People's Army, as they call themselves today. And he said, no, there were more than that. At the hotel, I'll bring the map and I'll bring the plans. You'll see exactly what we had.
Bob, let me interrupt. Just because some people may not know, some people may not be aware of the interesting work that Bob has been involved in the past few years. Bob, a Vietnam vet, remembers Benoit, a mass grave being dug at the Benoit airport near Saigon. And he casually mentioned here's an image of Benoit, and it's right here that we had a mass grave of Viet Cong that we buried. And you posted it on social media, on Facebook, I think, and somebody from Vietnam, like a Vietnamese colonel, today, contacted him and said, could you tell us where that grave is? We're interested in repatriating the remains, and in giving proper burials. And that triggered you to, this is amazing, to go to Vietnam and consult with the Vietnamese about all of these mass graves that are in Vietnam. And what you discovered, and I'm sorry to put words in your mouth, I just want to give people some context so they understand when you're talking. What you discovered is that the Vietnamese hunger for the remains just like we do. They want resolution. They want, anything, something is, closure is a bad word, but they want something like that. They want to be able to bury their dead.
They do. On the first grave, we were invited back a second time to attend the ceremony for the grave that we found of 80. We're supposed to be 150 there, but Vietnamese didn't know it in the 80s. They plowed through the north end of the grave and basically destroyed what was there. And the remains of that was just 80 out of the 150. But those 80 were buried in July of 2017. We were invited back, and they had second thoughts about getting us over there just in case something would happen in a negative way, even though they had 4 guys with us the whole time. But bottom line to it, what convinced me to really, I get a little hesitant with this one, but anyway, what really got me was the watching the ceremony on tape, filmed by Al Jazeera's, and I'm still looking for the woman that I'm going to refer to here. The first woman I saw walking down was a picture of her loved one, whether it was a father or an uncle, you didn't know who it was. And followed the casket, honorary guard. And Vietnam dressed it up pretty good. It looked like something that we would do ourselves. So it was all first class stuff. And they took exception. They took exception to everything that they did. They did it in detail, and it was really very nice. Anyway, while I'm watching the video, I zoomed in on I stopped the clip and I zoomed in on the person's face, and I could see the tears running down her eyes. And I said to myself, I got to go back and get the rest of them, find the rest of the graves. Now, it turns out that we were supposed to be hit by 1,800, ended up being 2,500. And I've got a photo of the airbase indicating where 5 of the 6 graves that we found so far. And to give you an idea how long this takes, of the 5th grave was just found in December of 2023. That's how long this process takes. I started it in 2016. It's not an easy thing to do because we need action reports. That's the key document that we use to figure out the action of the enemy and where they most likely the grave is located. And from that, I drill down to the individual units that were involved in the battle. There are some cases where part of the unit is taken out. One company is taken out and another complete different unit is brought in. It's usually the last unit brought in is the one that's doing the cleanup and search. So that's the unit I search for. And I drill down till I find a witness that's willing and able to basically remember where the grave is. And what I'll show you later on here this morning is some of the stuff that we use to help the vet remember. We're not interested in the detail of dragging the body. We know all about that, believe me. Everyone in this room is familiar with it. So we don't go into that area at all. All we do is discuss if it's a landing zone or a fire support base, how far out from the berm you are, and at what position on the clock. And we keep doing that until he tells us I'm there. We mark everything up on the map. I make sure we have a current Google view of what it looks like today. We don't show that until we get to the point of getting to know where the grave is. We don't want the guy being discouraged because it's just like looking out over the highway here.
Yeah.
There could be a grave under, 20 feet out in front of this place.
Right.
And you wouldn't know it. So we don't go into that detail until everything is done and we know exactly what he feels is where the grave is located. It's an assumption. It's an anticipation. It's a rough guess as to where the grave is. But when we send it out, we give it to Vietnam as the best location that they've had in the last 50-some years of where a grave could be. It's more than they've had before. They dug up all around Ben Wire Base. They couldn't find anything. There are 6 graves there. Of the 6, we found 5. We know where they are. They're not all excavated yet. But of the 5, that equals 1,600. That's based on witness accounts and documentation. So I'll give you a feel for just what's happened. And the rest of what didn't die at Benoit went back to Long Binh, and they probably died there because that's a whole nother. They could equal or surpass what Benoit had. Over toward Long Binh, Hoi Nei, and south of, on the east side of Long Binh Base. But there was a major battle in that area as well. And just recently, last week, witness notified me, again, these things pop up on the internet. Here's a picture of the Dung Nai military cemetery. That's where the Army would bury their soldiers. Well, he just flew over, going back to Saigon, and happened to take a picture of the cemetery. A week before that, I have a witness that says, regarding the Long Binh, I think the bodies were taken over to the Army Service Cemetery. Well, now, with his picture and what we have on satellite, we have a match on an open area that most likely this is where they were buried. And now we're at the process of eventually convincing the Vietnamese to get out there and search, do the initial ground search. We're testing the soil. And that's how they verify that there's a grave there. They don't have any of the technology yet, neither do we, to detect the human body underground that's buried in that condition.
I'm going to ask you, you can, give us such a great description of the work that you do, the archaeological, the excavation and recovery work that you're involved in. What I want to ask you is, why do you do it? I get a sense that it is a healing project for you.
I think back, just like the other gentleman said, who disagreed with the content of the war and the purpose of the war and how it was played out. It was wrong. It didn't take long for me to figure out that this was not the right place to be, even though I volunteered to go. I just didn't want to spend my last year in Vietnam picking off every day, wondering if I'm going to make it the next day. But in any event, even though I was security police, they're relatively safe compared to the infantry guys, but still in all, we stuck our necks out on the edge of the base all the time. But the thing that got me was the fact that the way the war was being run, I just felt that at that point that within 5 weeks I knew this was wrong. We didn't belong here. And from that, it's me trying to help them, and they appreciate it. They really do. I mean, we practically walk on water when we go over there. It is amazing, the treatment we get. And there's no animosity at all. You might just think we're a bunch of vets just like we're here in this room. Believe me. They laugh and joke around. The only problem is I don't speak Vietnamese.
If people wanted to help you or get involved or support what you're doing, could they just contact you?
Contact me at any time. I got a few business cards. I don't know if I have enough for everyone, but basically, if you think you know where a grave could be, that's where it starts. If you think you know somebody else that may know about a grave, that's where it starts. And all the graves that we've identified, And I stopped counting after a while, but as of about 2 years ago, we've identified locations where there's 8,000 of their soldiers buried. And that's all, every bit of that from a U.S. veteran. Nothing from the Vietnamese. They don't have anything. They don't have any paperwork. They destroyed it all. So it's bad.
Thank you so much, Bob. Thank you. Thank you for coming. Lena Fowler, I'm going to ask you to come around because I want you to look at this picture of yourself when you joined the Navy. I'm trying to think. How old were you? Were you 18?
I was 20.
You were 20. 20 years old when you joined the Navy. And why did you join the Navy?
I wanted a career.
You wanted a career. In what?
I just didn't want a job and have to work for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
20 years, pension. Sorry.
You're on camera. So you wanted a stable career that would be fulfilling and important work, and you thought the Navy would be a good fit. Was it a good fit?
Absolutely.
It was.
Absolutely.
You were on a couple ships.
Yes.
The USS Arctic, if you can see, AOE 8. What's an AOE?
It's a supply ship.
Supply ship. What was your job?
Supply.
I walked into that one. Specifically, what was your job?
So I work with hazmat. So I was with the Airedales. So I got them all the greases and fluids that they need. But we literally carry JP5, food, dry stores, clothes, you name it, we had it. Even cigarettes.
So you're the keeper of stores.
Absolutely.
Storekeeper. From cigarettes to JP fuel.
Yes.
That sounds like you could be open to bribes.
Well, what happened was, allegedly.
Allegedly. And then you were also on this ship, the USS Hunley.
Which was a subtender.
That was a submarine tender.
Yes. So they no longer exist. We actually decommed that in '94.
Can you tell me why, in my ignorance, why do subtenders no longer exist?
I have no idea, to be honest with you.
Is it because like diesel subs no longer exist and they're all nuclear?
There you go.
Is that why?
Yep.
That's why? So they don't need tending? They're okay. Nuclear weapons.
I think I worked there.
So how long were you in the Navy?
9.5 years.
9.5 years. You did not end up making a career out of it. Do you regret that at all?
So no, I got out 9.5 years, joined the Army Reserve for less than a year, and then I joined the New Jersey Army National Guard.
And how long were you in the Army National Guard?
I was in the about 7.5, so I got a total of 17 years.
Can you tell us the difference between the culture of the Navy and the culture of the Army?
That's one of the reasons the food is better.
Food is better in the Navy.
Camaraderie and how we live. You know, we slept in beds versus cots. We took showers.
You don't sleep in the dirt in the Navy?
No, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, no.
Big shower.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like a little bit of a come down to join the.
Goodness, you have no idea.
Really?
I couldn't take my Mickey Mouse blanket with me in the woods. So,
Thank you, Lena. Oh, and did you want to say anything about the Veteran Multi-Service Center where you work now?
so I am from New Jersey, thank you. I work for the Veterans Multi-Service Center. Sorry. Which we service veterans. We're literally a one-stop shop. If you need help with claims, housing, benefits, if you need food, clothes, we have it, and we're the only organization that has a women's center, something just for women. We actually service this area of Burlington County and the rest of South Jersey, but we cover all of Pennsylvania and Delaware. And I do have business cards, and I do have enough for everybody.
Okay. So you have business cards, and people can come and talk to you about the Veteran Multi-Service Center. Thank you, Lena. One of the things that the Veterans Breakfast Club does is travel. We're going to New Orleans on Monday for 4 days to the National World War II Museum. 32 of us are traveling there, and Lena's going to be there. She's going to be one of our travelers. We're also doing a 2-week trip of World War II battlefield tour of Europe. This will be the second time we've done that. We've gone to Vietnam 3 times. So we love when veterans go on these trips, and it's really a fun time to travel and to learn from each other as much as we're learning from what we're seeing. Hi, Karen. How are you? Could you stand up? This is Karen Jennings. She's with the Military Support Group of New Jersey. You are the founder and director. Do you have enough cards for everybody?
I do.
Good for you. You're not a veteran yourself?
No, but I'm a Marine mom.
Marine mom. Okay, before you talk about the Military Support Group, was it a son or daughter in the Marine Corps?
My son.
Okay. What did you think when your son came to you and said, Mom, I'm joining the Marines?
I was scared to death. I tried to talk him out of it.
Good.
My father is a Navy vet, and he said, don't let him go in the Marines. But he already made up his mind.
He made up his mind. You were a good mom. You did your job. You tried to, get him to accept the reality of what he's doing. But once you recognize that you have a bullheaded son who has his own life, this is what he wants to do, you blessed it and supported him.
I did, yes. After crying for 3 weeks.
And so clearly that inspired you to do the Military Support Group. Tell us what you do with the Military Support Group.
Well, when my son went off to Iraq for the first of 3 tours as a machine gunner, 1-2 Alpha Company weapons, I cried for 3 weeks, and then I thought there has to be help for families in the area, and I called Camp Lejeune, and they told me no, ma'am, and so I decided that I was going to start my own support group. And so 2 months after he left, the Military Support Group of New Jersey was born. We've been going strong for almost 21 years, and a lot of veterans come out. It's a nonprofit organization, a lot of volunteers from all over Pennsylvania and New Jersey. And as time went on, a Marine, suggested that we should send care packages. So that's what we do. We pack up care packages, send them to our deployed troops from all branches of the military. In fact, last year we had our highest year ever. We sent 877 large flat rate care packages to our troops. Yeah. And we also collect grocery items for the food pantry over at Joint Base McGuire-Dix Lakehurst, which is a stone's throw from here. And, they give me a list of what they need, and low-income military families are allowed 1 bag of groceries a week. And so we provide cereal and soup and crackers and tuna fish and mayonnaise, peanut butter and jelly, macaroni and sauce, those kinds of things.
I have 3 questions for you. Question number 1. Why do people oversee deployed units or, Marines overseas, why do they need care packages? Isn't the Marine Corps giving them what they need?
Well, that's an interesting thing. So the care packages are really about love, and it's the extra things. So a lot of, when my son was in Iraq, sometimes they had meals ready to eat, the MREs, but they didn't have extras. They didn't have toothpaste, soap. They didn't have beef jerky or, just things to make life a little bit more comfortable. And I'm sad to say it's still continuing, because last year we had a lot of New Jersey National Guards people deployed, and the families were coming to me and saying they need food, because sometimes the chow hall wasn't open. So I did a lot of inventive things with flip-top cans. I was even making them be able to have nachos with canned cheese, canned salsa, and I even sent tortillas and thought, hopefully they won't be moldy. But anything to make our troops feel loved and cared for, and we want them to know that we have their back, and it's really about love to me. We want them to feel that the people of the United States of America care about them and we love them, and so that's what they're all about.
Why do enlisted families at McGuire, this is question number 2, McGuire, Lakehurst, Dix, why do they need food? Can't they buy food? Can I let her answer the question?
Yeah, so, and also all the bases, it's not just there, because we've supported Pomona.
Are you saying they don't make enough money to buy enough food?
The lower enlisted people don't make enough money, and how it happened with me years ago, I found out they were feeding their children Kraft macaroni and cheese for the last 2 weeks of the month, every meal. Because mom was deployed or dad was deployed, and it made me so upset that we started with sending truckloads of groceries to the base. And
does our country not know that they're defending our country and they're not getting paid enough to feed their families?
I guess not. So, but you know what? It's all about supporting our troops and their families. So I can't worry about all that. I don't get into all that. I just do what I can to, and that's what we do. So.
What important work. Here's the last question I have for you. As a military family member, I mean, one thing that I've learned with the Veterans Breakfast Club, and again, I want to let you know, I did not grow up in a military family. I'm not a veteran. I was an adult, and I'm ashamed to say this, I was an adult before Memorial Day was more than a 3-day weekend. I didn't understand how important the holiday was. So, this is where I'm coming from originally. I have learned since that when one member of your family joins the military, the entire family does. In a sense, it impacts everyone, and it can be a very isolating experience because you might be the only person in your neighborhood with somebody. Is that something that you've run across?
Yes. Well, in the beginning, when my son first deployed, so I'm a Navy daughter. My father is going to be 90 in August. He was on the USS Antietam. Was stationed in the Philly Navy Yard. It went to Boston, hence the accent, just so you know. And my mother's father was in the Army, and he was a prisoner of war during World War II. And but you know, at the time, I was like you. You just live your life. You just don't get it, and then it is very isolating. So that's what the military support group tries to do: is we gather people who have no idea what they're doing. They're crying, they're frightened, they're scared to death that their child is not going to come home. And we tell them, look, we've done it, we've lived it, we will help you, let me give you a hug, help pack boxes, and it will make you feel better, right? You're not alone. Yep.
Karen, if people want to support what you do, I'm sure you're always looking for donations of items as well as donations of money to keep your operation going. How could they help?
Well, if you Google me like my 13-year-old granddaughter did, the Marine's daughter, you can find me, the Military Support Group of New Jersey. I do have business cards, and I do have brochures that show, explain what we do. You can email me, text me, go on my website. You can donate there. But really, one of the other things is if you know somebody that's deployed from any branch of the military, I don't care where they're from, if you can email me their APO or FPO address, we will send care packages to them every month of their deployment. And we send enough that they can share with their platoon, their air wing. I always said platoon, and then I realized it's called other things. But just to show them that we care, I send tasty cakes, I send Girl Scout cookies. Whatever we get, we send. So,
Karen, it's people like you that make the world go round. Thank you for the work that you do.
Don't sit down. Don't sit down. All right, everybody. As a Vietnam vet with tons of emotions and tons of PTSD therapy, therapists taught me the best way to get over the guilt and the shit you deal with is to give back. Well, as a representative of the Armed Forces Heritage Museum, last year I negotiated with a local huge bakery operation. We donated 75,000 pounds of bakery items, Entman's, Hostess, Thomas, 5 bread brands, to the very same place you go. And this December, you and I are going to work together because one of my old Caterpillar customers has a 1 million square foot frozen food warehouse in New Jersey, in Vineland, and he's promised me at least 20,000 pounds of frozen. You've got to help me get it to the people in need in this area. I can find some, but I can't find them all. And I'll tell you all a story that'll make you want to be involved with this. 2 Christmases ago, 21 December, I was standing at that armory right down the street with a truckload of frozen food. General Dutko was with me, Sandy Conville, many of our members, I don't recall everyone. And 1 o'clock in the afternoon, this 25-year-old young lady with 3 little kids in tow walked up to me and said, "Sir, I understand you have food."
Wow.
"Yeah, we do." She says, "Well, my husband's been deployed for 8 months. I don't know where he is. He's somewhere in CENTCOM. I don't know. When he's home, I can work at Walmart and we have enough money. But when he's gone, I have to take care of the children. I have Christmas gifts for 4 days from now because my parents bought them. But I have too much pride to tell my father I don't have any food." Whew. Well, I said, "Put your kids in their car seats." And I got other folks with us. We filled that car, every square inch of it, with food. And including our friends from Carvel had donated 500 Carvel ice cream cakes. They were in that refrigerator, in that frozen foods trailer. We gave them to her. She had 3 empty freezers at home. Well, I gave her my business card and I said, "Don't you ever let yourself be hungry. I want to know how you're doing. Send me a text in a month." She did. She said they were doing good. Her husband was going to be coming home. And then in April, which is like 4 months later, she said, "He's back, everything's fine." And I just said to her, "Don't ever let yourself or one of your friends go hungry." So you and I are going to work together.
Thank you, Karen. Yeah, how great. We have Colonel Nelson Mellitz with us. Colonel, could you stand up, please? He is a career Air Force Colonel. What made you join the Air Force?
Well, I'd have to say it's my father, uncles, aunts, everybody that joined during the Second World War, Korean War, etc. In fact, I have to mention that, I guess I'm supposed to turn this. I apologize for my back being against you. Okay, last night, BBC had Okinawa and the Army on Okinawa last night. I saw that show because I remember my father saying that he was a pilot on one of those landing crafts. He was in the Navy, Okinawa, Hiroshima, and several other islands until he was wounded. I did hear some of the stories he told when the kids were upstairs on the second floor. And he would talk about, to his friends, also military veterans, about what happened. Never really spoke to the kids, myself and my sisters, about that. But it impressed me.
Yeah.
And so I joined the Air Force.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And not thinking that you would have a career necessarily?
Oh, no way. It was during Vietnam.
Yeah.
And I figured if I joined the Air Force, I wouldn't go to Vietnam or anywhere else.
Right.
Well, of course I did.
Right.
But that's another story. And I stayed in there for 32 years.
So 32, yeah. So you must have liked it. I mean, there must have been something that kept you in, right?
Camaraderie.
Yeah, that's it.
That's it. It's always a camaraderie with everybody else. But then when I was sent to Iraq for about 6 months and I came back to visit my kids and my wife and everybody, they said, "This is time to quit." Like somebody else was saying,
Yeah.
It's time. Don't do it anymore. Let the young guys do it.
Okay.
You can't do it.
I'm trying to, what your years in service were what? When did you join?
September 1970. September 20th, 1970. We all remember that day. Out of Philadelphia. Oh, by the way, I have to mention something. VBC, they were abusing the Eagles last night. Yeah.
Veterans Breakfast Club. Yeah, we don't like the Eagles.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm an Eagles fan. See, be careful what you say. Yeah.
I wasn't on. I didn't say it. I wonder who did. Okay. It doesn't matter, but he'll hear from me. So you joined in 1970. You got out 2002. Think about the history that spans. The end of the Cold War, the Persian Gulf War, 9/11. Holy mackerel.
I was called back in September. It was August 2005, and I stayed until 2006 because my specialty was needed in Iraq.
And what was that?
Acquisition, contracting. They wanted me to be the liaison to the Iraqi advisors on the Iraqi side.
What was Iraq like? How could you describe it? How would you describe it to people?
I can compare it to Vietnam and elsewhere. We probably shouldn't have been there. We probably should not have been telling the Iraqis how to run everything. They should They should have been running whatever they wanted to run by their procurement system, their contracting system. That was during the surge, by the way, part of the surge.
Yeah, right.
Okay, my approach was when I dealt with the Iraqi generals, ministers, and everybody else, what do you think we should be doing? And most of the generals and the admirals didn't take that approach. They said, this is what you should do. And let's put the structure of the military the way this should be, the way the U.S. has it. It doesn't work. And a perfect example was we were issuing a contract for, I don't remember what it was. We had 3 choices for the contract. The United States decided to give it to the lowest bidder in Iraq for something. And the Iraqi minister said, if I give it to that person, this person's going to be killed. That one's going to be killed. That's going to. So I'm giving it to my relative who's going to be okay. And they actually did that stuff. You can't tell people what to do. And we did the same thing in Vietnam and elsewhere.
Try to make them on the American model, and it doesn't translate always. One of the things, among other things that I am, is I'm an internet creep. So when I saw that Nelson was going to be here, I Googled him, and I found this fascinating picture of him. There he is on the left. And I noticed right away it's not a U.S. uniform. And I was like absolutely fascinated that you can volunteer for the Israeli Defense Forces.
First of all, my stomach's sticking out, so get rid of that picture. I know I'm crazy, and my wife said I was crazy too, but I volunteered for they called it the Israeli Volunteer Force or something like that. And I had the opportunity to be there for 3 weeks until I had to come back to the United States. I lived on an Israeli reserve base. And the food was great, by the way, compared to anywhere else I was. It was really great. And I packed up medical supplies, and we knew things were happening in Gaza and elsewhere because they told us we had to get this amount of supplies in the packs and sent up there. Okay, it was an opportunity. You can go to the website, Israeli Volunteers for Force. I don't remember the specific name of it. You can volunteer to go there. Even now, they're asking for volunteers because the war is going on, etc.
I'm so curious about it because over the years I've heard and read much about the Israeli Defense Forces and the special culture that it has and how everybody in Israel serves. Everybody. And somebody said to me, there are severely disabled people who serve in the military because they can do something. They can contribute in some way. And I just thought, how different from our culture where a tiny, tiny, tiny percentage carries that burden and the rest of us, we don't even think about it.
You're exactly right. Everybody wants to volunteer to serve. There's certain religious groups that don't serve, but that's the exception. For the most part, everybody does serve, and that's something we should consider. I agree with that, especially that handicap group. That was impressive to me. I didn't meet any of them there, but I understand that severely handicapped people can volunteer to do paperwork or other things they're capable of doing. Why can't we do community service here?
Yeah, exactly.
It may change the culture of the United States for the better. And remember, during the 1970s when we volunteered or were drafted, we had the option to go into community service in some areas. And most of us volunteered, and we know what happened, but it's an option. We should present for our kids now.
Thank you very much, Nelson. Thank you for coming today. Colonel, I should say. We have Major Ron Hathaway. Ron, would you mind coming out here? I want to highlight you because you're another career. Nelson, when you joined, what rank did you join from the ROTC or?
I just enlisted.
You were enlisted, so you went from enlisted to full colonel.
Yeah, I made the mistake accepting a commission.
You accepted a commission. You went to the dark side, as you did. I mean, you didn't start out as an officer. You started out
as a private.
As a private.
Yeah.
And here you are in Vietnam. I love this picture. You had one of the most interesting jobs you could possibly have, and that is a photographer.
Exactly. Well, I was infantry for 4 years in the 2nd Marine Division Camp of June before I became a photographer. So when I decided to change my voice in 1964 to be a combat photographer in Sergeant E5. So I went to photo school up in Fort Monmouth, New Jersey. That's where I did the basic school. After I finished the basic school, guess where I went? Vietnam. Okay? I went to Vietnam as a combat photographer. I've seen things that you would not believe that has caused me to have post-traumatic stress disorder. I was shot down twice in Vietnam. I had the opportunity to meet John Wayne while I was there because I scored him for about a week when he was making the movie, The Green Berets.
Wow.
And he said to me, he says, Pilgrim, when you get to Hollywood, check me out. I had a 1911 45 on my hip. I escorted him for about a week. And he was there getting information to make the movie The Green Berets. Okay. Now, while I was in Vietnam, I was shot down twice. I flew over 80 strike flight missions. When I say strike flight, that means you were shot at least 80 times. Okay. I survived. Now, when I was in a place called Quang Tri Province, a friend of mine, I was a Sergeant E5 at the time, a friend of mine by the name of Corporal William T. Perkins Jr. We were bogged down with the MVA on our heels, and we were surrounded. A grenade came in near Bill's area, and Bill hollered, "Incoming grenade," and jumped on the grenade and saved the lives of 5 Marines. When I became a captain in the Marine Corps, I was building a new photo lab at Camp Lejeune. I wanted to honor my buddy, Corporal Perkins. And I wrote a letter to the Commandant of the Marine Corps through my commanding general to name this building after Bill Perkins. And this building stands today at Camp Lejeune as the Perkins Memorial Photographic Laboratory. Yeah. Anyway, these are some of my photographs I took in Vietnam. Now, when we went in the field, we had 4 people. A combat photographer, which was me, a motion picture photographer, a graphics illustrator, and a writer. We went as a team. Now, one time we went into the field, we went to such heavy fire near Quang Tri Province that we put on gunner's belts before we got on the aircraft. When we got to the zone and we were jumping off, we had to take our gunner's belts off because that kept us from falling out of the aircraft. Because a lot of times these helicopters would bank heavy right, heavy left. You could slide right out the door. So we put on these gunner's belts to keep us in play. Well, we landed in this zone, and then we all jumped out. I took off my gunner's belt. All the other guys took up the gunner's belt. Now, we had one guy who was motion picture photographer. His name was, what was his name now? I can't think of his name. But anyway, he jumped out. And when he jumped out, he forgot to take his gunner's belt off. Now, when the plane took off, we were on the ground like this shooting pictures, and bullets were flying everywhere. And looked at my friend there, and as we looked over, the helicopter was taking off. He was hanging underneath the bottom of it. It wasn't a funny situation, but it was funny when we got back. Yeah. But Joe Abreu, that was his name, Joe Abreu. When Joe got back, Joe had to change his underwear. And Joe said, "I will never fly again. That's it. I will never fly again. I will stay in the rear and develop film. But that's it. I'm done. I'm done." And really, Bill never flew again. And we had 13 months of tour in Vietnam. However, I did 33 years, 4 months, 16 days in the Corps. I went from private, I retired as a major. And when I retired as major, before I retired as major, I was in charge of the entire Marine Corps combat photography, worldwide. I had 400 enlisted people under my command and 23 officers, from warrant officers to captains. And it was a great tour. Great tour.
Thank you very much, Ron. Hey, we've come to yes, Richard. Could you stand up? You have something to say?
Yes, I do. I just successfully sold my company, and after hearing Karen's story, I'd like to give her a check. But first, you gotta tell me where you park your car.
In Harvard Yard.
There you go.
Thank you, Richard. Hey, I want to let everybody know we love we come to the end of the program. We'd love to do another event here. I'll be talking with Bob and Brian about scheduling something else, if not here in this room, in the area. I'd love to be able to invite you and let you know when we have our next one. So please do leave your email and your address. We'll make sure that you get our next magazine. We have these little slips of paper here, these registration slips at every table. I have some pieces of paper here with pens. Please do just write your name down before you take off, and to make sure that we're able to get in touch with you. One more announcement, Brian.
All right, so real quick, right down here at the Armory on 206 on 10 May, okay? All military are invited to Military Appreciation Day, May 10th, 9 to 1. There will be at least 45 military vendors, meaning from like Aetna Insurance right down to veteran service officers, anything you need to know from the VA, any medical. Good grief, I got my now past father-in-law, who was a Navy vet in World War II in the South Pacific. I got him a reverse mortgage on his home at that, so he could stay in his own house to pass away in peace. So there's a lot going on. Just remember May 10th, and you're welcome just to walk in. Thank you.
May 10th.
And thank you for coming.
Yeah. Thank you for coming.